Good morning, Year 10, and welcome to your Lesson 12 now. We're nearly there on A Christmas Carol. We're going to continue with the same focus, looking at the messages of the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. This time, though, I want to look quickly, this won't be long, at a key moment within Stave 4, which is Scrooge's arrival, in the supernatural sense, to the Beetling shop. In the obscure part of town that Scrooge has seemingly never visited before, a place of bad repute, okay, where the misery and abject poverty of society is most seen. Okay, Dickens even describes it as a den of infamous resort. Okay, so infamous is of course being known for bad reasons. So the way I want to look at this very brief video is just through a couple of key quotes, really. So if you have a copy of the novella on you, of course you can find them and you can highlight and annotate. This is starting from page 98 in the copy of the novella. Please, if you haven't already purchased the novella on WisePay, do so before Monday when you're venturing in for an English session, because they will be handed out to you. Okay, if you have a copy, obviously don't worry. So bottom of page 98, I want to have a look at this quote first. So the ghost takes Scrooge to this location that Dickens describes as into an obscure part of town where Scrooge has never penetrated before, although he recognised its situation and its bad repute. So as I've popped at the top of the slide there, what is the purpose of this visitation? We know that Scrooge is taken throughout this single evening that all of the ghosts' visitations take place to so many different locations. He is exposed to a wide variety, a plethora of images around Christmas time that all have a singular sort of purpose or reason. Well, this one, the Beetling shop, I think, is actually to expose the response of Scrooge's death in the wider community to Scrooge, so that he can truly see how little positive impact he has made on those that should matter. So this quote here, into an obscure part of town. Obscure means, somewhere that, especially for Scrooge, is not well known. It's sort of, hidden away on the very margins of society. Now, this is where the lower social classes live. And of course, it's no mistake here that Dickens creates imagery of these people being outsiders. Okay, Scrooge is a member of the upper social class, and the fact that he's never penetrated this area before, he's never found himself within it, shows again, metaphorically, his lack of care for the underbelly of society, for the lower rungs of the hierarchy. Okay, he has positioned himself upon high and has encouraged this very blinkered perspective. Okay, now it claims though that he does recognise its situation and its bad repute. Bad repute means bad reputation. So this links all the way back. We're almost cyclical, but not quite, because we're not at the end here. But we do have a narrative link here to the assumptions that Scrooge made in Stave 1, where he exclaimed, "I can't afford to make idle people merry." Now, the people that live here around this area is who he was referring to. Okay, those that are largely unemployed or within jobs that would not be considered skilled. Okay, so he was passing real derogatory judgment upon the lower working class, and he was lumping them all in within a sweeping generalization as being apathetic, lazy. Okay, so this lesson is going to be a really important one. Okay, not only does it expose the responses to Scrooge's death in the wider community, but it also will alarm Scrooge to know that he's lived most of his life harbouring false prejudice and discrimination against those that need help most. Okay? So when we enter the Beetling shop, and a Beetling shop, by the way, would be akin to like a resale shop in Victorian England, a pawn shop, where you would take, items no longer wanted and they would be sold on. Okay, so obviously not a charity shop, but second-hand goods sold on to the wider community for profit. Okay, to those that cannot afford things new. And I just really like this quote. This is at the top of page 99. Upon the floor within were piled up heaps of rusty keys, nails, chains, hinges, files, scales, weights, and refuge iron of all sorts. Now, I am out of breath trying to articulate it, that elongated list of nouns, of things, right? And when you look at them, as I've popped at the top there, the tableau of poverty is telling, it's damning for society. It reminds me very strongly of the chains that Marley forged in life in stave 1, and of course those that Scrooge will also be doomed to don if he continues to pursue his current way of life. Okay? Now, it's a very elongated list, so for me it shows the extent of poverty, how far-reaching it is. Okay, we have adjectives like rusty, which of course suggests misuse or disuse, and the idea that they are forced to buy goods that are below par, that are lacking in quality. Okay, they are stuck in this cycle of poverty. Okay, then we get the very telling interaction, the sort of exchange of dialogue between those that are here visiting the Beetling shop to sell on goods that they have acquired. Now, obviously, I say acquired there in a certain way to suggest that there is a strong implication that many of these individuals here have happened upon these items through theft. Okay, there's one woman who is the charwoman, so she's a woman that's employed as a cleaner in an office or a house, and when she turns up, she has various goods that she may well have stolen from there. However, Dickens' intention here is to not cast moral judgment upon those that have stolen these items from their masters or their mistresses or their employers, because apart from the example of Fezziwig that we were given in stave 2, we know that in Victorian England so many of the upper classes, not all of them, but many of them, did not offer out a fair wage, much like Scrooge, did not care about the comfort of their employees. So to be honest, and they say it themselves at the bottom of page 101, it's no sin, okay, to plunder, to loot or to rob, okay, because what they feel they're doing is purely enacting in the process of survival, okay. They do say, however, this declarative: every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did. And that's at the bottom of page 100. Now, I think that whilst we do not morally judge this sentiment because of their context, their circumstance, this closed off sentiment, this closed off way of living, where it's every man for themselves, seems catching in society. And I think the point that Dickens is saying in a higher level way here is that change will not transpire, it will not take place if there are not more positive models for change within a community. So there needs to be more Fezziwigs, there needs to be more Freds, okay? There needs to be people in slightly more privileged positions that can aid and assist those so that they do not have to resort to a criminal way of life to simply sustain themselves. Because unfortunately the working classes can acquire some quite derogatory ideas and sentiments because they are not given equal opportunity and support, okay, within the hierarchy. Okay, nearly there. Now, this is one of my favourite quotes, and this is on page 101. And Mrs. Dilber, laughing, exclaims that Scrooge's, and they talk about him because they have stolen his bed curtains, okay, from around his dead corpse. So really morbid, but it shows the extent of poverty. Anyway, she labels him a wicked old screw. He'd have had somebody to look after him when he was struck with death, instead of lying gasping out his last there, alone by himself, right? If he had cared for others, if he had assisted those below him within the hierarchy. Okay, so lastly then, just to finish this off, this quote here, when she calls him a wicked old screw, she uses that metaphor. I go all the way back, again, not quite cyclical, but to stave 1, to the very damning, limited, omniscient narrator who describes Screw as hard and sharp as flint, that should say as flint, sorry, and solitary as an oyster, those two similes. This label, this metaphor that she provides here, which is basically his how he'll be remembered, right? His epithet, a statement to kind of define his character, is wicked old screw, and that is another term for the devil, by the way. Okay, so he's full of sin here. He is judged heavily by the wider community. This, in death, this harsh judgment is the consequence, the ramifications of his behaviour in his life. And when Scrooge sees this, and when he listens, at the bottom of page 103, and he listened to this dialogue in horror as they sat grouped around their spoils, so what they've stolen. Okay, and we end on this. Again, the woman exclaiming as she laughs, he frightened everyone away from him when he was alive, to profit us when he was dead. And she laughs because she sees the wonderful irony in it. No one was there to inherit his goods, to take care of him at his funeral, because he frightened everyone away. So now we can profit from it because we have been able to to take his goods. This is the spoil we have before us, and so Scrooge now is bereft of care and of loved ones. So I end you with this at the top. Do we truly judge those who have stolen Scrooge's belongings? Because after all, he was part of the wider problem in society. The working class have had to resort to a criminal way of life as there is no refuge for them. Okay, so a really key extract there. Once you've got your copy of the novella, obviously you're going to want to read that through fully. It could very well come up in the exam, and I just think this is such an informative lesson for Scrooge. It's horrifying. It shows the true extent of poverty. And this allows him to work his way out of that oyster, to see the world at large, okay, in this really dark dystopian vision of the world. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and please, if you need anything, just let me know. I'm always here.